Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and on today's show, we'll discuss this weekend's games, and we have a really big fixture list this weekend with football in action for the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship group stages, and of course the hurling. We'll have a Super Sunday of Munster hurling action, and of course Kilkenny and Dublin in the hurling as well. And delighted to be joined here by Jason Keelan from the Loaf podcast to discuss this weekend's game. So how are you, first of all, Jason? How's all up in Westmeath?
It's not too bad. I suppose we're the what was it, Donegal has referred to us as we're last year's nearly ran's winners. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for us. I wrote an article for the paper here this week called, I can't read the exact title, but basically, is it a reward for us to be where we are, or is it going to be more of a, I wouldn't call it baptism of fire. It's not like we've been here before, but it's just different format. I don't know how well it's going to play out for us, but look, we'll see what comes of it anyway.
Oh yeah, sure, definitely. It's an interesting developments, all right, and interesting developments actually earlier today that David Brady. I don't know. Did you see my post earlier on David Brady saying that Westmeath could beat Tyrone or Armagh? What do you think of
that? I didn't see that. No, I've been drilling walls here in the new house since I came home, but I remember David being at one of the live shows I was at a few years back. Serious character, and I don't know whether he's taking the mick here again or not, or maybe he's just looking for a different angle that nobody else is really taking. I know Eamon Sweeney had a piece up during the week basically saying that those lovers of sadist football will be delighted with Westmeath, in this group, that we could be absolutely murdered in every game. It would take something special, I think, if we're being honest. It would take something special for us to get a result, given the way the collapse went in the league against Down, the way the collapse came against Louth when it came to championship. It's hard to be optimistic, if I'm being honest. Far more optimism in the ladies' football at the moment after commentating here during the week as well. Look, I'd love to see a victory against Tyrone. Galway, no, not a chance. And no, I just Tyrone is their best shot, really. I think Galway are coming to Mullingar. It's going to be a great day out. It's probably about the height of it, really. They're OTB, I think Shane Hannon or Tommy Rooney are one of them, and off the ball made Galway. They're didn't put them at their number one in the power rankings, but said that they are his favourites for it. So probably have to agree as well. I think Westmeath are in with the favourites for the All Ireland. So yeah, I won't call it quiet optimism because it's really not, to be honest.
Exactly. So, but even Armagh, they're after a heartbreaking defeat last weekend. They have 2 weeks to prepare for the Westmeath game, and you look at Westmeath, they still have a lot of weeks to prepare. I know the players are incomparable, to be honest with you, but Westmeath still have hope there.
Possibly. Armagh will be slightly reeling, I think, from what happened the other day. To have it, I suppose they had it in their hands for several times, maybe, and it slipped out of their grasp. And to lose in the way they did after last year's Galway outing as well. I don't know. I know the players, I should say, kind of incomparable. We have got some excellent players here in Westmeath. It's just, for some reason, even in the league, I was at most of the league games, just not quite there yet. I know Desi is new enough, has to be said, to the scene as well in management. He's tried out a lot of new players. We have some great lads coming through. Senan Baker's one of the finest footballers I've seen, young footballers, in a long time. But Jack Smith, Sam Smith, the 2 lads, there's plenty of talent there. It's just I was comparing it the other day to Italy in the Six Nations. It's like Italy have been whipping boys for so long, but every advancement they make, every other team ahead of them makes 2. And while it looks like they're catching up, it's hard to know if the gap is really actually shrinking or if it's just getting bigger, and we just can't see it as clearly. And it could be the same with Westmeath, that maybe the step we're making is great, but maybe Galway, Armagh, Tyrone, everyone else is making 2-3 steps forward. So it's hard to know. But look, if a result comes like the hurlers did against Wexford down here, last year, year before, whenever it was, we'll take it. Like, we'll snap your hand off for a result in this group, to be honest. So.
Speaking of the hurlers, we'll get on to them in the minute. Westmeath are coincidentally being Wexford this weekend as well. But, we'll get on to the football first of all, and the mouth-watering game in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And it is Group 1, Kerry against Mayo, 3 o'clock on GA Go, live in Killarney. It doesn't get much better than this, like a huge game. You look at the rivalry that these two have had down through the years. And actually, I think in the millennium, Mayo have only beaten Kerry once in championship football, and that was in 2017 when Andy Moran provided a masterclass. Lee Keegan was brilliant that day. Aidan O'Shea was playing full back on Donaghy, and it was brilliant for Mayo that day. But like Kerry, All-Ireland champions. But at the same time, like Kerry haven't done well enough this year. I know they hammered Clare quite comprehensively in Munster, but it's fair to say Kerry haven't really hit the heights they have last year.
Yeah, but is it at the same time, is it just typical Kerry? Is it just we don't want to show our hand too early? Just we'll tip along in first gear, second gear, whatever it takes just to get through the league and even survive the league. It's not even about winning the league, I think, for them. Yeah, as you say, I knew you'd come up with a good stat in the Statsman that Mayo have only beaten them once in such a long time. Mayo find a little bit of form. Aidan O'Shea kind of came back to the fore, would it be fair to say, in the league? Like, performance-wise, was just on fire in many ways. Kerry, I thought, I know the last week's game was very much overshadowed by Mrs. Clifford passing away. I thought it was very brave of the two lads, very typical GA in Kerry to come out and to play the game so soon after. I thought it was very similar to when Micheál O'Shea died, Paudie's brother, the Tomas and Dara Mark's father, the week before a Munster final, and they went out and played the game. That's just the nature of the GA, I suppose. Kerry were insanely comfortable against Clare, kind of disappointing in some ways that it was so comfortable. I thought Clare maybe might have just, come out and given it more of a wallop in the hope that they might, get a moral victory or something out of it. They ended up getting nothing out of it, and they were going to be overshadowed by newspaper headlines anyway. That was a given. I don't know if I was putting my money on someone. I don't know. I think in my predictions thing, I put down a draw, and I don't know if that's if that's just my head going, I don't know. It'll definitely be a draw. They're fairly evenly matched teams, But now that you've given me the stat that Mayo have only beaten them once, I might be changing my prediction after this one.
Interesting. Yeah, one of the comments actually come in, and she was a big commenter last week on Mayo especially, and she's saying, I think you know who I'm supporting, and I think we know already that you are a Mayo fan through and through. We definitely know that. But look at Mayo. Like, they did well in the league, but you look at their lineup. The lineups have just been announced. Thank God for the GA's new rule of the lineups haven't been announced by Friday lunchtime. But you look at Mayo's defence. Conor Loftus at centre back, Sam Callan and Jack Coyne at corner back, then David McBrien at full back. I know players like that have performed well in the league, and they have good, potential there in that Mayo team. But the inexperience is there, is there for us. Yeah, and you look at Kerry, David Clifford, Paudie Clifford, Sean O'Shea, Tony Brosnan, I think is starting his first ever championship knockout game. Well, not knockout game, but in the All-Ireland series. Yeah. Munster. So, like, Kerry have a frightening forward line as well, and this will be an absolute test for Mayo, and in Killarney too.
Yeah, when you read it out there, actually, you nearly feel sorry for the Mayo lads there. When you put, like for like, 52-3-4 against 13-14-15, they reads like they're lambs to the slaughter in many ways. Apart from Conor Loftus, as you said, the rest of the lads, league is nothing in many ways compared to what they're about to face into on Sunday. Kevin McStay's a bit of form though, hasn't he, in doing that kind of thing with club and county over the years. If lads, if they're good enough, we'll give them the go, and it doesn't really matter too much, who they come up against. It is a little bit, of a baptism of fire for these lads. Like, they're going to come up against something completely different. Like, put the two Cliffords into, championship football, and it's different to the two Cliffords you would have met in the league, or it's different to them, even with Fossa club level. Like, it's completely different. So, yeah, that's making me now consider my options even more. So yeah, I didn't see any teams or anything today. So that's massively inexperienced. Like, that doesn't even, you probably count the number of games on one hand, between the three lads that you mentioned. Very much over reliance on one man maybe to lead the back line, which you don't really need that against Kerry. And I know the other side to it is one win and you get through, basically. So is this in some ways the game for them to try out against the best of the best? And they might get bet, but they'll be looking at going, look, we'll pick up a win in the other two. We'll get through. Which, I know that's another conversation about the bugbears. I hate the fact that only 4 teams are getting knocked out. I think this is such an absolute waste of time. But yeah, look, that's another conversation. But yeah, maybe that's the thinking behind it. Put them up against the best. If we get beaten, they'll have experienced playing against the best, forward line potentially that there is around. And then we'll pick up a win when they're settled in another game and they've had the chance to play against Clifford, etc. So, yeah, I'm changing my tune now. Kerry have to win that, surely. Even as a Cork man, you probably agree.
Jeez, so no, we'll see about when we get to the nitty gritty of the predictions now. But in regards to the team news, I'm just looking at the Scorpio app. I didn't look at the teams either this week of the same Seamus. So a big shout out to Scorpio there, brilliant app to have. But even looking at the other side, like Kerry, I know they performed well defensively last season in the All Ireland, but this season, even in the league, like Roscommon should have nearly beat them in Armagh, possibly in Tralee as well. Mayo slaughtered them in Castlebar this year in the league. And you look at Mayo's forward line: Ryan O'Donoghue, James Carr, Aidan O'Shea, Jack Carney, Jordan Flynn, Dermot O'Connor, and Matty Rowan in midfield. And you look at the Kerry defence, especially Jason Foley and Tide Morley at the centre of that back line. Like, there's still opportunities for Mayo to pull off a surprise somewhat.
Yeah, maybe we're expecting a high scoring shootout here, perhaps. It's a strong. The Mayo team gets progressively stronger the further up the numbers you go, and when you get to 13, 14, 15, particularly Aidan O'Shea, and as much as I've given out about him over the time, just he annoyed me sometimes watching games. Just, I don't know, it's not laziness, it's just the fact he's such a big guy. It just sometimes came across a little bit lazy in the tackle or whatever, but he was phenomenal during the league and he started getting headlines again, and I think that gives him the boost of confidence. So it'll be very interesting. It's Jason Foley, I presume, fullback, is it, for Kerry again? Yeah. So like Foley against O'Shea, probably, like, as great as Foley is, you'd probably give the nod to O'Shea on that one. Like, and if push comes to it, if the game is in the melting pot coming near the end, who do you want in there for a long ball if you're a point behind? Bar Kieran Donaghy comes out of retirement and sticks on a Mayo jersey, you want Aidan O'Shea in there. Like, so, yeah, like it's a very interesting battle when you read out the two teams. As I said, I didn't have a chance to look at any teams, but when you read out the teams and I hear them aloud, it has all the makings of, as you said, it's a huge game Sunday, probably the biggest game, but it has all the makings of a massive high-scoring shootout, particularly with, like, Kerry have running backs as well, so it'll just take one turnover and, Mayo Max Day might opt to go long, play it up to the lads and tell them, you stay up there if your lads going forward, let them run, and you stay up there. If we turn it over, then we have 4-3 or whatever, and we could be in for high score. I hope I haven't jinxed it and it's like 9-8 at the end or something, but I think it could be in for a high scoring game.
The thing is, like, you look at the Football League, and I think John McMahon from the JMAC podcast mentioned this, like, it is competitive, the Football Championship this season, but games have been pretty terrible when you look at it. When you look at the scorings in it, especially the Mayo Roscommon game, we were expecting a high scoring game in that, and like, it was a low scoring in that in general. But in terms of prediction, you're going for Kerry. I'm just going to go for Mayo. A lot of people going against Mayo in this. I just like, they were very unlucky against Roscommon. I thought they got the tactics all wrong in the first half, and then they started improving in the second half, small, but eventually losing that game. I just can't see a team that performs so well in the league losing 2 games back to back. I don't know what you think yourself, but I just fancy Mayo for this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think there's a lot of Kerry that we haven't seen yet, and I think it's the same every year. Even if Kerry won the league, I still wouldn't judge Kerry on the league. It's just they're a totally different team when it comes to proper championship football. This is the stage now to start open the gears a little bit. Whether they'll go full throttle against Mayo again, it's hard to know. It was I can't remember who I was chatting to. Someone was saying about the Mayo Roscommon game. There was something very strange kind of about the way that both sides played. It was almost as if neither wanted to give away any idea of how they were going to play further on the championship, and it just, as you said, didn't make for the greatest spectacle in the world. I think Davy Burke was a little bit disappointed in the end. It was a huge missed opportunity in many ways for them. So you're going for Mayo. Okay, I won't go against you because I have a feeling if I say no, Matt, you're completely wrong, that Aidan O'Shea will come up with like 3-6 in the second half or something stupid, and I'll look like an idiot. So I'll stick with Kerry for this one, just purely on the forwards against the backs and the not even a huge experience of Clifford. It's just of Clifford's. It's just the natural ability versus the lads at the back who are just not. They're not going to essentially know what's hit them really until Clifford just swings a right boot at it, or Clifford throws a shoulder, or Sean O'Shea is knocking frees over for fun or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Kerry for this one.
And just before we leave this game, like a comment from Denise here about a particular Mayo player, Andy Hitch, is on the bench. But I looked at the bench again and the Scorio app here. Power Gohora is number 24. If he started this game, believe it or not, he's going on Clifford. He's going to get his revenge on him.
Yeah. Yeah. 24 in the back is probably more likely to be a 2+4 and make a 6 and stick him in there somewhere. Look, if he's on the bench, that has to be some kind of ploy, we won't name him, but like realistically, if he's anyway fit at all, like a half fit Power Gohora probably more use than a 90% fit, not unknown defender, but a lad who's not played, senior serious football like this before. I'd be sticking in a half fit Power Gohora just to niggle at him or, poke him in the back or just get at him. Whereas, a slightly more nervous fella is not going to really do that. They might think they're doing it, but at the same time, he'll just take one kick off the right foot and that's it. You look like an idiot. So, I'm still sticking with Kerry. Even if a horror starts, I'm still sticking with Kerry by like 4 or 5, I think, in the end.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll go for, because you mentioned a score, I'll go for scores. I'll probably Mayo by, I'll say it a 1 point win. 1 point win for Mayo. Last bit of point for Mayo, no chin. You heard it here first. So we're going to go for opposite ends there. But the next game, which is live, go as well, and mouth-watering clash as well. Galway against Tyrone on in Pierce Stadium, Salthill, in Galway, Group 2 of the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. This is an intriguing encounter when you look at Tyrone. They didn't perform that badly against Monaghan, but still lost through that late Ryan O'Toole goal in additional time. Galway have probably been one of the best teams in Ireland this year, if not the best in the country. So, mouth-watering tie again.
Yeah, as a massive Power Choice fan from back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm thrilled to see Galway, and the fact I was born in Galway as well, I suppose, have a little bit of a second Maroon team to follow when Westmeath inevitably get knocked out. So it's great to see Galway football back at the top kind of table of everything, and been at the All-Ireland last year. They were very, very good for long periods, but when they fell away and when the pressure was on them, they just got pegged back a little bit. And I think that's where Power Choice has worked on the most this year. They don't look like they're ever going to panic. I think even if they were behind in a big game, they look like they would be okay. They have the bench, certainly. I know that's been chatted about in a few different things I listened to this week, that their bench is, far more experienced maybe than others, and that they can rely on. They can call on scorers, they can call on defenders, they can call on a bit of height in midfield if they need it. Matty Tierney was class the last day out. Now, of course, if you're going to give him that much space and time, I wouldn't expect anything less from him. But to kick whatever was 2-6 or 2-7 or something that he kicked, he was class. They haven't. I'm not a big fan as a former goalkeeper. I'm not a big fan of rotating goalkeepers, and I know poor choice is still between Gleeson and Power. And this was a debate I was listening to as well during the week, and something they were saying one side saying Paddy Andrews or James O'Donoghue saying you need to stick with one keeper, and the other kind of saying, well, there's nothing wrong with keeping the two lads on their toes all the time, because that means you've got two solid keepers. One is maybe better at kickouts than the other, and if you need a game for short kickouts and saves, you pick one lad. If you need it for long kickouts, pick the other. So, I could see this one being very much a short kickout game from Galway. Tyrone are probably going to do their usual thing of pushing back from the kickouts and just try and stifle goal as much as they can. A low scoring game potentially. I think Kerry and Mayo is going to be our high scoring one. Probably go against me now. Galway, Tyrone will probably be like a high scoring cracker, and Mayo and Kerry, as I said, will finish 9-8 or something. But I think Galway, Tyrone will be low scoring maybe for a long time, and then I fancy Galway to just pull away and come out with a comfortable enough victory in the end, I would say, and that'll be their win, and they'll be through, and then they'll use the Westmeath game likely for trialing out a few lads here in Mullingar, I'd say.
And what pleases me so much about Galway and pleases the whole country, you look at the team they have, it's kind of a mix of youth and experience.
Yeah.
You look at the experienced players, Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, Ian Burke, you could say, Peter Cook. But then you look at the youth, you look at Matthew Tierney, Tom O'Callaghan off the bench, Jack Lynn, Killy McDade, who's come back in the last few years. And on McDade, he was brilliant in midfield last year. He's been moved to wing back because John Mars played so well. So, Galway's strength and depth is incredible at the moment.
Yeah, and it's even that versatility that they have, like that you can move McDade from a very specialised position of, midfield back to a completely different specialised position of, running wing back. So the fact you can do that and the amount of interchange that they have between, the forward line, the half forward line is shown, the range of scorers that they have, over the league and over the last game as well. I know Matthew Tierney took all the headlines, but there were plenty of other lads, who got on the score sheet and scoring opportunities. So they're not over-reliant on one or two or maybe even three. And as you said, the bench, when you got like Tom O'Callaghan coming on, most counties would chop their arm off to have a lad like that coming off the bench just to bring that bit of burst of energy into the game as well. Going forward, you have that mix, as you said, of youth and experience, but you also have that mix of pace, skill and power. Like Comer kind of brings really all of that, but he's an absolute tank of a man. Shane Walsh will throw dummies left, right and centre and leave you for dead and kick off both feet. Even like Finnerty and the lads who are coming through as, top class players, they all have versatility in position, but they're equally as versatile off both feet with power, strength, skill. Like in many ways, they're probably the most complete forward line in football at the moment. Dublin, haven't really fully settled on a forward line as such. Yet, even Dean Rock, the saviour of all the years gone, isn't quite there, and you wouldn't rely on him as much, I think, from play off the left and the right, whereas, Shane Walsh, you can't decide which way you're going to go with him. He goes one way, he scores, he goes the other way, he scores again anyway. So, yeah, and then the fact you've got an O'Shea type sort of hustler in there like Comer who can put an arm up and just knock you over or, bury the ball to the back of it. And then you have Matthew Tierney, who's a tall figure, quite slight, in frame in many ways. He's built up a little bit, but he's quite a slight kind of player. And yet he can, come in with goals as well. And it was the nature of the goals the last day. It was the ease at which they just burst through the defence. And Tierney had, the handiest scores in the world really at the end of the day, but he had to take them. So, yeah, the mixture of youth and experience is big. I think even more useful for them is the mixture of positional changes they can do and the skill set that they all bring up front. There's nobody who, I think Boris Joyce, if he spotted one lad wasn't able to do something, he'd just be dropped for another lad. And that's exactly what they need. You need the competition for place, the same as any sport.
It's interesting that you mentioned Galway have the best forward line in the country, most complete forward line, because you look at Tyrone's forward line at the moment, full forwards. Dar McCurry, Matty Donnelly, Derek Hannivan.
Yeah.
Had it some forward line as well. And you look at Canavan, when he was on song against Monaghan, he was nearly unstoppable. Curry is an incredible forward, we all know. And Donnelly, I think, has revolutionised Tyrone this season since he's come midway through the league. So, and you look at their midfield as well in Brian Kennedy and Con Kilpatrick. Like, there's every reason to think that Tyrone could rattle Galway in this game too.
They could, yeah. Con Kilpatrick in the middle is a phenomenal athlete more than anything else. I know I think hit a couple of scores or score against Monaghan. Derek Hannivan was a 1-4, 1-5 or something he got the last day out. Really kind of flourishing, I suppose, as that, youthful guy who, turned up off the bench whenever it was, and everyone was kind of going, geez, here's Canavan, all over again. And now, but he's really shown he's really kind of living up to the pressure that the name brings with it. Matty Donnelly, yeah, revolutionary is probably the best word for it that you use there. And for McCurry, they have a very, very strong forward line. It kind of goes back to the Mayo versus Kerry thing. The Galway defence, I think, would be more able for the Tyrone lads. I could be proven wrong, but on paper, they're more adept and more able than the Mayo lads will be against Kerry. And that's where Galway maybe have the slight upper hand, is that when you read through that Mayo team, I was kind of going, oh God, a little bit here and there. Read through that Galway team from back to front, I don't feel as kind of uncertain at the back. I think they're pretty solid, pretty set. I think Poor Choice kind of knows most of his team at this stage, bar his goalkeeper, obviously. But other than that, yeah, I think it's pretty settled. And I'd still fancy Galway to come out on the right side of it. Maybe it'll be more, now that you sort of read it out, maybe it'll be more interesting than I've kind of given it credit for. I kind of expected Tyrone would go up score and then push back into that sort of defensive setup that they're very, very good at. Galway breaking it down, I think they will break it down pretty well, because they're going to turn a lot of frees because they run at defenders. So, Tyrone are going to eventually have no option except, take them down and concede the frees, and then it'll be up to Tierney, Walsh, Comer, Finnerty, whoever's taking it for whatever angle. So I still fancy Galway at the end of it all.
Interesting. I said Tyrone would win it on Tailteann Cup the week. Yeah, it's the same reason really for me. I just can't see Tyrone losing 2 games on the bounce. It's that kind of a way. I just think Tyrone and Mayo got their tactics all wrong against Roscommon. Nobody could deny that.
Yeah.
But Tyrone, I actually don't think played that badly against Monaghan. And Monaghan just got that goal in the end through Rhino too. I just think Tyrone have a kick in them. You look at the Brian Dewar and go on.
Yeah, no, it's just I'm just trying to remember, Conor Myler, I think played. I'm just trying to go through the Tyrone team in my head. I think most of the forwards scored or played very well. Myler did. I think it's 1-4, 1-5. I don't have any scores right in front of me. Most of them did score, so maybe there is a case for them that if they can break down, an Ulster defence in Monaghan, who they all in some ways have similarities in the way that they funnel back, and that's just the nature of Ulster football in some ways. So, so maybe there is something to be said for them, but Galway a very different kind of setup, and the teams that they would have faced, traditionally wouldn't be the same kind of setup that Tyrone would have. And I still fancy Galway. I know yourself and Aaron Musna were chatting about it during the week, or was it Seamus? Yourself and Seamus, was it? Yeah. I'm still going to stick against you. I'm not going against you deliberately, but I still think it's Kerry Galway double for me, and you can go Mayo Tyrone. Then we'll see who wins.
We'll see, definitely. And these are probably the most intriguing games out of all the weekends. But when you look at the next 2 games I'm going to mention, I think these have the most ramifications when you look at them, in my opinion anyway, and with many other people's opinions. Starting off in Ennis, Clare against Donegal in Group 4 on at 2 o'clock on Saturday. loser of this, when you look at Monaghan and Derry in the group as well, the loser of this is most likely gone out of the All Ireland. So it's a must-win game for both sides. And when you look at Donegal's form this year, I know they're Division One. I know they've won All Ireland's recently as 2012, and they got to an All Ireland final in 2014 under Jim McGuinness. But when you look at Clare's form, beating Cork, getting so close to staying up in Division Two, they were counted themselves unlucky in Division Two as well. Clare will be licking their lips at this one.
I think they will, yeah. Donegal football is kind of missing that marquee name that it would be synonymous with, like Murphy, McFadden, whatever it might be, even like Jim McGuinness, been the marquee name for a little while. They're just missing something. It was Jason McGee, I think, scored a goal or 1-1 or something the last day out, and was it Darrow Boyle, I think it was, scored. Like, it's great to see the lads coming through that they have, but to get to the ultimate prize, you need a marquee name, or ideally names like every team realistically who are challenging for it have, and Donegal don't have them. Murphy being gone, obviously that they had to have seen that one coming, but nobody has yet, as such, has kind of stepped up to the plate to be his successor, in the same way that we lost Desi Dolan, retired. Now we've John Heslin. When Heslin goes, we don't have anyone really to step up at the moment. That's where the youth comes in, and we're trying to bring some through, but we're maybe not seeing it. You'd expect Donegal, their sort of place in the history of the GA, you'd expect them to have come up with something since then, and they kind of haven't, unless there's a name off the top of my head that I'm completely missing. But like, I remember the last day was kind of Thompson, O'Donnell, McGee, Darrow Boyle, and possibly Patton. Patton might have scored as well. I kind of expect his name to be in the score sheet these days. So, they're missing a marquee name somewhere, and Clare will absolutely be loving this. Like, this is dreamland for them. Bring Donegal down. Let's see, how they fancy a trip down south, a little bit further than usual, maybe. As for Clare, scoring wise, I don't know. What do you think about Clare in terms of scoring?
They've some very good forwards. Like Keelan Sexton has scored 110 from play in 3 games, which is absolutely impressive. In fairness, and Owen Cleary's done brilliant as well. Podge Collins is more of a workhorse around that forward line. Emma McMahon has done well in the Tailteann Cup as well this season. So I think they do have scorers all over the pitch. Like Daniel Walsh at wing forward is a bit interesting, considering he's been playing wing back most of the time. In fairness, Keith Lee's back at the team for Clare this weekend. But to take up your point on Donegal, and you're saying they don't have a marquee player, even look at the team at Scorpio, I can't see any either. Like Jamie Brennan's playing centre forward, but I've seen over the last few years he's a bit hit and miss. Owen Bog at centre back is another. Quayla McGonigal at midfield possibly, but Hugh McFadden is full forward, and he's usually a midfielder, which probably tells you all you need to know as well. So,
it's not the Donegal of old. It's not even the Donegal of, say, recent history. Like, the marquee name may not necessarily win an All Ireland, but might win an Ulster title, or will at least put the county into the spotlight for some whirlwind performances or something. Like, even like Clare technically now have Cleary and Sexton, who are 2 marquee forwards, because pretty much everybody in the country at least knows Keelan Sexton because his name is mentioned in every attack. Whereas, if you lined out the Donegal team 1 to 15 and said to someone, fill in the blanks there, I don't think many would be able to fill in much of them. And now the fact that Hugh McFadden, you've told me, is playing full forward, that says a lot about where Donegal football is. It perhaps, I don't know, does it say more about the management or more about what's coming through, the fact that there isn't an out-and-out 14 of recognition to step up, that they're now having to utilise a man who I can't ever remember being named at full forward on a starting team before. Maybe he was, but he's not a guy that you're going to play the low ball into and hope that he's going to jink around a defender and chip the ball over. He's very much, we're playing this in route 1, and he's going to lay it off to somebody who's going to try and score. So it's not ideal. And like, Clare will. This is their chance, really. Like, and as you said, whoever loses here is gone. Um, and it could be the turnover of the weekend. It could be the one that really makes the highlights on the Sunday game. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna ask you for you first. Who you think's gonna win?
Jeez, like I actually think Clare could win it.
Yeah.
I might be Munster biased, but I just think like UK Clare's results this year, looking at their forwards on the pitch, the only worry I'd have about Clare is I think they had over 10 wides against Kerry, they had 14 wides against Cork.
Okay.
They have to get their shooting bang
Hmm.
on. But to be honest, like even if the shooting isn't bang on, I think this Donegal team is very, very poor. And when you look at the Ulster Championship as well, a lot of people actually predicted, like a lot of people actually said after the Down game, it was a surprise, it was a shock of the Championship that Down beat Donegal. But I was kind of looking at that game thinking, is this really a shock? I know Down are Tailteann Cup, but Donegal are an absolute mess at the moment. And Paddy McBrearty going, you look at Ryan McHugh stepping away as well. It doesn't look good for Donegal, and I think Clare have the edge.
Yeah. Like Donegal they kind of capitulated a bit against Down. It didn't. In Pat Havern kicked one, whatever it was, 2 or 3 or something, and a foul for a penalty, 3 handy frees. Like, you're not doing yourself any favours by handing scores to teams that easy. And Donegal of old would not have done that in any shape or form. Like, they would have been sound defence, pretty sound around midfield, you'd have to say as well. And then you'd have forwards who other teams would be afraid of. Most teams would have in the past been more concerned about how do we stop these lads and get a few scores of our own. Whereas I think Down went into that going, let them try and stop us, because they don't have, as you said, they don't have anyone on that team sheet that you'd be afraid of in their defence. So let the forwards kind of have a run at them and see what happens. So I agree with you. I don't think that was a shock at all. In many ways, I'm kind of surprised Down didn't put them away a bit sooner. They kind of allowed Donegal play a bit of football, which maybe a Down team that has been in an All Ireland or something competitive since 2010 might have kind of put them away a bit quicker. But I think Down were kind of kind to them in some ways, that they were a bit naive about putting them away. But I don't think that was a shock at all. No, I think Donegal I think they're going to be beaten. I think Clare, I'm going to agree with you completely. I think Clare I have no Munster bias whatsoever. No links to County Clare. But I'm going to agree with you. I think Clare are going to pull one off there, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Clare could win this game. And finally, we have something to agree on in game so far. We're on game 3. But we'll move on to the next game. And this as well is a big game for both sides. Sligo against Kildare, Group 3, 2:30 on Sunday in Markovich Park. Like, this is a huge game for Sligo, particularly because you look at Sligo's other 2 games, Roscommon in the Hyde and Dublin in neutral venue, which I would imagine Tullamore somewhere, but still wherever they're going to lose to Dublin anyway. So this is a big opportunity for Sligo. But for Kildare, if they manage to lose this, like all the work against Dublin in the semi-final, running them to 2 points will be going down the drain, you'd feel.
Yeah. I've been happy enough I was happy enough with that Kildare Dublin game, because I kind of was starting in some ways to feel a little bit sorry for Glenn Ryan and Johnny Doyle and that backroom team who I adored back in the day, and to see them kind of not getting much success or much change of what they were doing. It's ghastly. It's such a a repeat from the under-20 final. So maybe Sligo will use that as a bit of motivation to try and fight back and not do what the under-20s did. For whoever loses is a kind of the same thing, I suppose. Really, whoever loses is probably good night. Like, really, I think. I find this one very hard to call, because I don't trust either forward line to kick huge scores, but I equally don't trust either defensive line to shut out the forwards. So I'm not really sure where the winning of this game or the losing of this game is going to come from. I know Kildare have been very good, to be fair, bringing through like Woodgate and Highland and Aaron O'Neill, I think, as well, like from the underage setup. And yeah, they've been very, very good, and it's great to see. Whether either side, realistically, probably both of these are probably looking at this as their All-Ireland final in many ways, because realistically a win in this game is the best I think either are going to achieve by the end of whenever they're knocked out. And again, it's another debate again, is this really the best format to do all this in? But look, it is what it is. So I don't see it being a classic game. It's going to be, I think, very defensively structured, that both sides will want to just hold the other out and nick it by a couple of scores. Or Glenryan might do what he tried to do against Dublin and try and get on the board early, kill the game off, and just stifle any momentum Sligo might have. I do like Pat Spillane Jr., I have to say. I think he's such a good footballer. It'd be very unfair to say, wasted in a team like Sligo. I think that's an unfair statement. I heard someone say that before. It's quite an unfair thing to say, just because he's not on a Kerry team or whatever, but he's a cracking footballer. And he might be the spark that they need to get them past Kildare. I don't want to put my neck on the line. I was going to say a draw, but since we're going for teams, I'm going to go against all my relations in Kildare, and I'm going to say Sligo to pull off another shock. You heard that here first. Yeah. No, you can't pin me to the wall and say who the hell is going to kick the scores for them, because I don't trust either side to kick huge amount of scores. So it'll be low scoring Sligo victory. I guarantee I'll turn on Scorbio or what's the score, one of them, and Kildare will be outside after 10 minutes and I look like an idiot. But I do like Sligo. There's something I suppose coming from Westmeath, there's something great about seeing a team that's given no expectation and no hope whatsoever, getting this far, getting into the last 16. We got here on the merit of winning something last year, but if it was based on this year, we wouldn't be near where we are, whereas Sligo at least have earned some merit in this season where they are. And I kind of like the fact that they're going to try and mix it up now with the big lads and the big guns, and it should stand to them. And I think, as I said, this is their best chance, and I think they'll pull it out of the bag, and that'll be the end of Glenryan and them. They'll be sacked.
Jeez, you definitely heard it here first. I remember Ryan Devlin said this very podcast last year that Clare beat Roscommon, and I was like, whoa, what was that prediction? And it's the same with you here, Jason. Whoa. But at the same time, I can see why you're saying it, because Kildare have been so inconsistent this year. You look at Division 2, they were nearing relegation form, really. Clare should have beat them in Ennis. Loaf beat them. Limerick on another day, if they performed better, it could have beat them as well. They got hammered by Cork and Newbridge. Kildare could produce any kind of a performance, and they don't have to spread the scores that Sligo do. So, but at the same time, because Kildare got so close to Dublin, I just can't risk it. I'm going to go Kildare. I just think Sligo, they're Division 4. Look, it's going to be a big ask. They've only played one team of Division standard or above, and that was Galway, and they got slaughtered. So maybe that could be a factor too. But look, I can definitely see why you're going for Sligo to win this game.
I do love an underdog as well. I do love an outsider. I was interested actually to say I was going to ask you about spread of scores and stuff and where the scores might come from. So Sligo have a more, although maybe it's not reflective in some ways, because Kildare obviously had to take on Dublin, and you're not expecting 10, 11 lads to kick scores against Dublin. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking at it in some ways that maybe Kildare expanded so much effort and intensity against Dublin to get where they did and still get beaten, that it's maybe a little bit kind of deflating. And now they're looking at it going, oh, we're out of Croke Park. We're being sent to play, outside of, the big stadium, the big venue. We're on a tight little narrow pitch here now, and, it's going to be windy and everything's going to be happening, and they'd just be like, oh God, bring us back to Croke Park and give us, another go against the Dubs. And, Sligo could just pinch them on the day. I'd love to see it happen. I'm not just going for the crack. I think Sligo will be looking at this as their All-Ireland final, whereas Kildare might kind of think, okay, look, we're a big county. Historically, we're very good. We can keep this going. But for Sligo, this is their All-Ireland final. This is their cup final, essentially. So it's win or bust for them, really.
Yeah, I definitely see why you went for Sligo there, but again, we disagree. But Sligo,
Yep.
if they win this, Jason is the man here, and he said Sligo would win this. We have to see what happens in this game, indeed. And comment coming in here from Lily May, if it comes up. Yeah, there it is. The Tailteann Cup will be discussing in this video, and we're just going to go on to the Tailteann Cup now. So there's going to be two games that I've picked out here, and then the other games will be just word on them. But first game, and I was deliberating whether to put this game up or not, Carlow against Limerick. But because of Carlow's brilliant performance last week, I said I'd give him a bit of coverage on the podcast this week. They're in action against Limerick in Nate Cullen Park at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Like, Carlow, could they win two in a row? Like, it was a brilliant victory over Wicklow, especially having a late surge in the last few minutes. But Limerick, battle hard, really. Like, they've only won one game in competitively this season, and that was against Longford last week. So still, there's a chance for Carlow to create even more history here.
Yeah, that was pretty special. What they did the last day, like, and to do it in the manner they did, to be out of the game completely, and then just to like completely take everyone by surprise, was brilliant. I was delighted for them, because when I hear Carlow, I just associate Carlow. I just hear Brendan Murphy, and that's it. I just assume Brendan Murphy is after kicking all their scores. Even he might be retired, like whatever, but I still assume Brendan Murphy is the only player Carlow have. And yet they look so good in the last 10, 15 minutes. I got to watch back the actual, turning of the game and such. I didn't see much of the rest of it. I saw the highlights, but I got to see the actual full last bit, and it just took one score, and it was suddenly like someone just said, hang on, lads, we're after scoring here. These lads can be broken down a bit, and the Wicklow just fell apart. Like, it was kind of comical in some ways how badly they collapsed, given the fact that Carlow are such, non-runners, we'll say, generally. But I'm delighted for them. Limerick, very fortunate, I thought, against Longford. Some questionable decisions in that game. Longford also missing a few lads, including my cousin, because of a wedding that day. So they were down a couple of names that normally would be thereabouts on the team. So Paddy Christie, of course, had to skip the communion as well, or most of it, to get down to that one. So you can't question the determination of Longford, but they'll be disappointed. Limerick will both be very buoyed by the fact that they won in the first round, because they probably both came in with relatively low enough expectations. Like, everyone is talking up, down, and Meath and a few others, to be thereabouts at the end. But maybe you could get a surprise pack. There's always a surprise pack every year in some shape or form, whether it's, New York have done it this year already, but there has to be another one somewhere. Whoever wins it, like, it's 2 wins from 2 for either Carlow or Limerick in the Tailteann Cup. Like, I don't think many people would have put money on that at the start of the games to the week. So Limerick just maybe have that little bit more experience in playing against teams with a bit more depth and a bit more strength. Carlow wouldn't generally get past the opening round of Leinster. That's rich coming from Westmeath, man, I know, but they generally wouldn't get past the first round of Leinster. So maybe now Limerick obviously aren't pulling up trees in Munster either, but the competition they have is slightly different. So I think it's a Limerick win. Sadly for Carlow, I would love to see them keep going, but I think it's a Limerick win in this one, even if it isn't Carlow.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go for Limerick as well. I think like, some players are actually very, very good. You look at Ian Corbett, Cian Sheehan. I don't know, is Josh Ryan going to be available this season, or is he just injured for the whole season? But Limerick have an abundance. So you'd have to fancy the Limerick boys to turn Carlow over. But a comment here coming in, it's directed at you, Jason. Who's the native? Who's the cousin?
Oh, jeez, am I allowed? I know. Dara Doherty, Mostrom, is my cousin, the only Mostrom man on the team. And they were all at Killian Lynn's wedding last week. So there was a few Longford names missing. Not too many now, to be fair, because Dara had been the only Mostrom lad, but there was a couple of panel players, we'll say, who weren't who weren't there the last day. I actually probably should apologise to Limerick people who might be listening, because I made a great joke about Limerick football at an event that I was emceeing a few weeks back, and a 6'6" Limerick man came up at the end and said, "That was a very funny joke," and I went, "Oh God!" And I was only, I actually, it was Westmeath man Kieran Martin was at it. You that loved your stats. Kieran Martin, who scored the goal in the Tailteann Cup, was there doing the medals with me, and I said, "Who was the last player to score more than 2 goals in a championship game against Meath before Kieran Martin?" And it was Ian. God, I think it was Ian Corbett. I can't remember his name for Limerick. He scored like 3-7 against them back in 2008 or something. And I said, "Well, sure, no one cares about Limerick football anyway," and just moved on. And this very tall Garda, 6'6" Garda, came up to me at the end. Lovely fellow with great crack at the end. But apologies to any Limerick people who I may have insulted that night, and will insult again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's Ian Ryan is his name.
Ian Ryan, yes, Ian Ryan, yeah.
But
You're right.
brilliant footballer back in the day.
Yeah.
Brilliant footballer. Like, I remember all them scores and the scoring charts down with the smaller counties with Ian Ryan, Emil Mulligan from Leitrim is another one. Sean McCormack of Longford, I remember, was always the scoring chart back in the day. So yeah, we're going blast from the past there. But speaking of Emil Mulligan, we're going to his county next. Leitrim against Fermanagh. This is a live televised game in the Tailteann Cup this weekend, so we have to cover it in a way. 6:00 on Saturday in Group 4. And Leitrim, after losing last week to Antrim, but Fermanagh drawing against Wexford. So both need a win here, but more so Leitrim, because like you look at their fall this season, since Division 4, they lost to New York, then they lost to Antrim. It's kind of been sub-fall for Andy Moransman.
Yeah, New York was a tough one to take, considering that the world and its mother was cheering for New York as well. It's becoming a tougher one to go to, because of the fact that, you know, the game is growing exponentially over there, and might be in touch with an awful lot of teams over there as well, like every week, and you see how much the game is growing, and you're sending a team across the pond like to take on New York, and in an awkward kind of pitch, an awkward place in the middle of, you know, city full of skyscrapers. It's definitely not sending them to Mohill anyway, like, so, you know, it wasn't the ideal thing for Andy Moore, and really in the championship he could have done with something else, even over to London or something. New York was probably the last place really he wanted to go, because the potential for an upset was there. The fact it was on telly, you know, it all conspired against him really on the night. And I don't think they've really recovered from it, and I don't see them recovering from it either. I think maybe a little bit in the kind of Colm O'Rourke mould at Meath. I think he's building on a slightly longer plan than maybe last season, this season. I think he's kind of looking maybe another 2 years down the line at trying to get a Leitrim team who are maybe more competitive. And Colm was saying the same during the week on on the radio as well, about, you know, he's looking at a long-term plan. But then other people will argue, well, look, it's not Andy Moran's first chance at this, you know, has he not kind of got anything out of it? If anything, they seem to be going backwards. So it's a tricky one. I expect Fermanagh to kind of calmly and beat them comfortably enough. They'll be very annoyed at drawing the last day. That was a giveaway to give away the free as the way they did, and to, you know, get a draw of the game will really frustrate them, and they'll come out, I think, all guns blazing. And I think Leitrim might be in for another tough day at the office, unfortunately.
Yeah, they could do all right. I think Fermanagh, like, they'll be buoyed after last week, especially after giving away, as you mentioned there, a soft free against Wexford. So yeah, I would say Fermanagh should win this game, and they should get their Tailteann Cup back on track there. But we'll go to the best of the rest section now in the Tailteann Cup, and we'll start off on Saturday's games. It's all Saturday except for one on Sunday, which is the double header of Tipperary and Limerick at the Hurling. But we'll get on Tipperary down in a sec. London against Cavan. London got hammered really last week against Offaly. Cavan relatively comfortably beat Laois last weekend, probably one outcome.
I'd say so, yeah. London, blooding a few new players coming into the team. That guy in the middle, Josh Obahor, looks like a big lad. Looks like he could do a job for a lot of teams. But again, they're of the two exiles, I suppose, New York and London. London have very much fallen away from that, you know, team where my mate Greg was scoring goal, to get them into the Connacht final like that. Those days seem to be a distant memory at this stage. And it's very much all about New York now these days. So 1 win, I think it's Cavan by, pick a number really, I think.
20.
There you
Something
go.
like that.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to go for Cavan in this game. And
Yeah.
it's a Leinster derby, the next game. Longford against Wicklow in Glenn Brothers Pierce Park at 5 o'clock on Saturday. Like, both sides on 0 points, as we mentioned with the Limerick and Carlow group. The loser this, you'd feel, are in massive, massive trouble of going out of the Salthill Cup. And who do you think will win this game?
I haven't really got to chat to my cousin to find out what the crack is within Longford at the moment. I think they looked the better of these two teams based on their last game. Wicklow, should have put Carlow away. That's obvious enough. Longford were up against better opponents in Limerick and ran them to the end basically. And I think, Paddy Cullen probably could have saved the first Limerick goal as well. It kind of went through his hands a little bit. I know it was a decent effort, but still. And Paddy Christie, I think, was more upbeat, I think, than usual after the game. It kind of saw something, obviously, that would make him feel that there's a win there in them. And I think Longford will win this one, maybe with 2 or 3. Interesting.
I'd probably go for Wicklow in this game, but we'll have to see what happens. It could go either way, definitely. The next game is at 5:30 on Saturday evening. Wexford against Antrim in Chadwick's Wexford Park. Should be an interesting game. This Wexford obviously drawing with Fermanagh, as we mentioned before. Antrim beating Leitrim. If Antrim win this, you have to feel they'll be in the next round of the Cup anyway. And for Wexford, if they manage to beat Antrim, which is a big possibility, Antrim travelling all the way down there, that'd be brilliant for John Haggerty's men.
Yeah, it'd be huge, yeah. So winning the draw, it's a great start, to go undefeated in the first 2 games. Would be lovely in some ways to see Antrim getting a win again. Another team that's kind of coming through. And for all Mr. Cusack's comments, these are the kind of games that teams need. This is made for Antrim. It's made at the moment for Wexford. Wexford football is not of the Banville and 4 days of the past. It's at a different lower level, and this is where they need to build from. So I'm going to go for a Wexford win just because I think there's enough in them to get past it. And the fact Antrim have to travel all the way down is not... You don't want to travel the whole way down the East Coast, to be honest. But I'm going to go for Wexford in that one.
Probably go for Wexford as well. And another comment coming in about Longford players. I don't know, is this true now? But half the Longford players have left the panels, left the team since Paddy Christie came in. But he also mentioned that they did well against Limerick, the young guns, as you mentioned there, Jason. So maybe there's hope in Longford yet. We'll have to see about that. And the next game is a bit of a foregone conclusion again, unfortunately. Waterford against Meath in Waterford. I think it's Farrfield at 6:30. In Dungarvan. I know Waterford are trying to make strides under Aoife Fitzgerald. They started well against Down, and it's Meath only scoring more scores than their opponents only twice this season against Division 4 teams.
Wow.
And Waterford are a Division 4 team as well, so you'd expect that trend to continue. But you'd expect them to win the game, but they have to perform better to even get close to the Tailteann Cup this season, you'd feel.
Yeah, I know that, as I said, our earlier column is kind of bringing lads through as well, and I think he's very straightforward talker. I really like him, even as the fact he's a Meath man, don't hold that against him. But he's a great pundit, great manager. I've always kind of liked him. Aaron Lynch, I think, had a great debut the last day, played really, really well. They've got some strong kind of lads coming through in the middle of the field as well from underage setup. They had Adam Flanagan there for a while, and I know he's friends with lads from around here from Mullingar, and that was probably his mistake, I suppose, been friends with them. But that's why he's not around too much anymore. But Meath should win this at the canter, really. And if they're far enough ahead, which I think they would be, it might be a chance for O'Rourke to bring a few more lads off the bench and try them out. I can't see Meath winning this by anything less than it has to be at least 10, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So like Meath are pretty bad at the moment, but Waterford
Yeah.
just after the races either. But yeah, like it should be a comprehensive win for Meath there. And the next game's actually interesting. Two Leinster rivals again. Laois against Offaly at 7 o'clock in Port Laois. I don't know about you, Jason. No, I see the Laois and Cavan game, and I thought Laois actually performed well in the first half. I think they were credited. Like Mark Barry performed well, Evan O'Carroll in the forward line. I think Kieran Lewis did well in midfield. But Offaly, of course, they played well against London last week with Cian Farrell scoring 2-4. You have Jack
Mm.
Bryan there as well in the panel. A lot of under-20s coming through the ranks as well. So you'd have to fancy Offaly, but I think Laois will definitely put it up to them.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I usually chat to Anton before Offaly games. Haven't chatted to him yet, but we'll see what the stories with them. But I would fancy Offaly. The county in general is kind of on a bit of a buzz at the moment as well. That win in the hurling during the week against Wexford at the under-20s and that cracker of a game. Like things are generally going well for them around the place. Like it's not winning All Ireland's yet, but from where they were to where they are now, it's chalk and cheese, and it's great to see it. Yeah, Cian Farrell was class the last day, and probably should have scored a lot more than the 2-4 he got. But as good as Laois are, I don't think they're back where they want to be at all. They are bringing a few young lads through. My brother-in-law is, on the county board down there, and you get bits and pieces from them. So I still think an Offaly win. It'll be tight. These Midland games are always tight. We never have a runaway winner in the championship. Like even Westmeath might play Offaly, and one could hammer the other in a challenge game one week, and the next week could come out and be a point in the last kick of the game. It's just, I don't know what it is about the Midlands. It's the Pat Flanagan effect, I call it, because he's managed them all. So, but I think Offaly by 2 maybe.
Yeah, you'd have to fancy Offaly for this game. But Laois, I think they aren't back quite yet, but they are making strides to be back. Like Mark Barron's a superb footballer, I think, and they're definitely back. But well, they're going to be back in the next few years, not quite yet. But you look at the last game, Tipperary against Down Simple Stadium at 1:45 on Sunday. It's the curtain raiser to the hurling game we're going to mention in a while, but it's probably not the glitz and the glamour of it. But still, I know it's in Simple Stadium. It's supposed to be hurling fans that's going to be in the ground, but you have to expect Down, even with the crowd there, you still have to expect Down to win this game.
Yeah. I think Tip will probably try and do like a man marking or a double marking job on Pat Havern and just try and keep him quiet. But like, you look at the Tailteann Cup as well. I think after reading through all the teams, Down, I think there's only one that have contested in All Ireland in nearly my lifetime. From the 2010 game, I know where you guys won. I was at that game. So like, if you're playing on historical form, they should be probably using that in some ways to say, look, lads, we're the only one here with a bit of silverware or a bit of a contest in an All Ireland final. They should have way too much for Tip. I remember though going down in Westmeath, I think nearly getting beaten by Tip back in the day. Down in Semple Stadium, Declan Brown might have kicked a few points that day for Tip, but again, like a lot of teams, they're not where they want to be. That team that won Munster in 2020 is just evaporated in many ways. It's not held its shape at all anymore, and Down should win 5 or 6, I'd say.
Yeah, you probably have to fancy Down to win this game as well. So, that's the Tailteann Cup, and that's the football draft. But we'll move on to the hurling swiftly now, and we'll move on to a Super Sunday of Munster hurling action, because that is the main attraction this weekend. It will start off chronologically. Clare against Cork in Ennis at 2 o'clock live on RT2. This is a mouth-watering game. Clare, obviously, with 2 wins out of 3, including that brilliant win over Limerick in the Gaelic grounds and hammering Waterford really last week at Simple Stadium. Cork have done well too, beating Waterford and drawing that miraculous game against Tipperary in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. So, and it's a full house in this game, I'm hearing as well. So, a huge game.
Yeah, and the Munster Hurling Championship once again kind of proves to be I won't say the saviour, but like even I remember I was looking at the table or whatever during the week, just kind of in passing, and it's the scoring difference is so tight between the teams, except obviously Waterford because they're just cat. Like I'd love Westmeath to have a crack at Waterford at the moment. I think it would be the ideal time to play them. Like we'd probably beat them. So if they're not too busy bowing down to Davy Fitz in the huddle beforehand, of course. So it's set up to be, realistically, the two Munster hurling games are set up to be the main sort of, I suppose, interest of the weekend for so many. That Cork and Clare game is going to be an absolute blinder. Like, especially if you said if it's a full house, like that alone is enough to set the tempo without a ball even been thrown in. And then you've two teams who are just going to absolutely go at it. I don't see any holding back. There's going to be none of this, let's stick a few lads back and hope we can, hold out. It'll hopefully be like a good high scoring game. Like the games that some of the teams have been involved in at Munster, like the scoring in it has been outrageous. Like that I was in Belgium the night of the Clare and the Limerick game, and I remember a few of the women on the Belgian team were keeping an eye on the score. They were from Clare, like, and the roar that went up like was unbelievable. And then I was just flicking through scores from other games like the other day, and I was like, Tip put them 5-23 or whatever it was, and then like astronomical scores, like in some way for Munster Hurling Championship. Now, you'll probably prove me wrong with the stats and say that that's completely normal, but to me, it just comes back and it just kind of, it says these are great games. This is exactly what we want to see. And as much as I think Cork are on the up, Clare are equally very much on the up, and that win over Limerick by a point, it's enough. You couldn't care less if you won by a point or won by 10. It's a win against Limerick. It stopped the run. It changed the dynamic of the championship completely. I would fancy Clare to pip you guys by a small margin. I don't think it's going to be anything massive. Clare maybe by 3, maybe by a goal, possibly even puck of the ball. You're going to go for Cork, obviously.
Like it's going to be a really, really difficult game to call when you think about it. Like in regards to look at the team news here, like you look at Clare's forwards, and I could definitely see why you're going for Clare. You look at all of them, all 6 of them: Ryan Taylor, Peter Duggan, Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell, Mark Rogers, Ian McCarthy. That's unreal.
Yeah.
Brilliant forwards. You have Paul Malone in midfield and David Fitzgerald as well to add to that. Clare look on far, but when you look at Cork, like Sean O'Donoghue, the team captain's actually back in the team this weekend after a long injury off. So he could be the key to Cork need. Kieran Joyce at centre back there as well. But you'd have to feed for Cork. Lads around Patrick Horgan have to step up. You look at Conor Lehan, Shane Tartney, Brian Roach in the last few weeks has, in fairness to him. Conor Callahan comes in place of Robbie O'Flynn, who's again sidelined, unfortunately. He's having the most luckless season, to be honest with you, out of any hurdle. So it's unfortunate for him, but you have to look at Clare's talents. Like Cork, definitely get your point. Cork are improving, but Clare are improving more.
Yeah, and my reason, I suppose, for going for Clare is purely based on that spread of potential scorers more so, because Patrick Horgan is a standout name, like as phenomenal as Harnedy and all the rest are. Realistically, at the end of the day, if Patrick Horgan doesn't get the scores, Cork probably don't win. But for Clare, there's just that little bit more where you could kind of go. I'd even go back as far as like, I think David Fitzgerald in midfield is outrageously talented and doesn't get enough praise for what he does. And I think just even having him in the middle could chip in a few scores as well. Having O'Donoghue back though is big for Cork. I didn't realise that he was back, so that does make a bit of a difference, because like he will go through brick walls like to win a game for Cork. Like he's the captain for a reason. Like there's no messing with him. Like I'm still going to go for Clare, but O'Donoghue does make me think there might be less goals. I kind of thought in my head Clare were going to get a few, but because he's in there, that low ball into the Clare forwards is probably not as straightforward. The fact that he's there, because he's a proper solid defender. I'm still going to stick with Clare, but nothing between them. Puck of a ball between them, I think, at the end of it all.
Definitely so. I'd probably go for Clare as well. But it'll be very interesting to see who actually Sean O'Donoghue goes on. Like, would it be Matt Rogers? Possibly, would it be Aidan McCarthy? Like, it's going to be very, very difficult to see who he goes on, but we'll see definitely on Sunday. That should be a very interesting matchup. But play devil's advocate for a minute, and we move on to the next game in talking about this. If Cork beat Clare, this game comes into fruition then. Tipperary against Limerick, 4 o'clock on RT2. If Cork win and Tipperary then beat Limerick in Semple Stadium, the All-Ireland champions are officially out of the All-Ireland Senior Football or Senior Hurling Championship. Incredible, really.
Wouldn't that be great? Look, I know it's a terrible thing to say, but just the way the world is, that no one likes a long-term winner anymore. The days of even like Man United winning so many, Premier Leagues in a row. I think if that happened today, there'd be calls, for something to be done about it. I don't think it's good for the championship to see Limerick on, but at the same time, it would be a massive mark of the progress the teams have made if they do get knocked out. The Munster Hurling Championship is already amazing as it is. Imagine next year if Limerick came in having been knocked out in the groups the previous year. How good would that be next year? How good would the rest of the championship be? Like, it's already going to be amazing as it is. But how ridiculously class would it be if Limerick aren't there and the rest of them, it's like dogs fighting for the last scrap of food, and suddenly the main dog that was bullying everyone is gone. And you have the rest of them now all just fighting for it, and they just have to give it their all in every minute of every game. Tip could, this is going to be completely stupid of me, I think, to back Tip to beat Limerick, but Tip could, on the day, just catch him. Cian Lynch, the difference one man makes to a team is, even with Limerick, I think is astonishing. I don't know what it is that he brought to the team that they just, I just haven't seen the same. And someone was given stats during the week, and you probably know them anyway, about number of points and goals they've conceded in games and how they've conceded so many in so few games compared to what they had in run-ups in the past. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to the fact that he isn't around, really. So, I don't know, Tip to pull out the scalp of all scalps and Cork to beat Clare, and suddenly we have a Limerickless hurling championship. Are we just wishing for the greatest summer of all time, or the greatest early summer of all time with that happening, possibly? But I think Limerick will just have enough experience in the tank. I don't think John Kiley would let that happen. But it's going to be a cracking double header, because the influence one can have over the other is exactly what we were looking for, that we don't really have in the football at all. It's no influence from one game to the next, really, whereas this matters so much, what happens in one game to the other. And I just, it's exactly what the weekend needs.
Definitely is. Especially this game is the build-up game on RT at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I actually can't wait for this, and it's a Friday. It's absolutely it's such a mouth-watering tie, and they rub it in even more with the mouth-watering. Limerick are going to be with Garrod Hegarty for this game. It's confirmed. He's back in the team. Faced them. Tipperary are without Jason Ford now. He's injured for the rest of the Munster Championship campaign. Mark Keogh comes in his place, but then again, Mark Keogh scored 1-4 off the bench against Cork. So, maybe it's not much of a big loss as we thought, but Garrod Hegarty back first of all for Limerick. What a huge boost for them, if it is to save them.
Well, huge in every way. The man is an absolute mountain. It's huge, and physically, it's huge mentally to have him in there. Even if he never poked the ball in the whole game, the fact that he is there just adds that little bit of extra mental baggage for Tip that they probably don't need. And the fact Ford is gone, I know you're saying Mark Keogh scored 1-4 or whatever off the bench. It's not the same as having Jason Ford. Again, it's kind of that mental thing that you just see Ford there, and there's kind of a sense of, I know what this lad is capable of. He's done it before, whereas it's not quite the same. Mark Keogh is probably going to fall into that mold eventually. But at the moment, Jason Ford is that household name that you'd put your mortgage on, to rattle the back of the net. Mark Keogh maybe doesn't quite have that fear attached to his name yet. Hegarty coming back, though, that swings the tide a little bit, I think, in Limerick's favour here, just by putting him on the team sheet. And yeah, it's going to have to be slightly different for Tip then to bypass him, because obviously he's not the easiest guy in the world to bypass. So you rely then in your long range shooting a little bit more. They're very disciplined in the half back line. maybe that is just swaying it more in Limerick's favour, possibly. That commenter there was asking the question, was it what? If Limerick lose, they're gone complete. Don't they have to rely?
Well, it depends on other
Yeah,
results, to be honest.
yeah,
If Cork beat Clare, then Limerick are gone.
yeah.
Say that Limerick lose against Tip. If Clare win, then it's most likely a Clare Tipperary final. It's a straight shootout between Cork and Limerick next week.
Okay.
If it's a draw between Clare and Cork, then I'll do the maths in my head now. Clare are going to be on 5 points. Cork will be on 4. Yeah, Limerick are most likely out unless they put up a big score against Cork next week. So, look, if Limerick do lose this game, they'd have to win against Cork next weekend, regardless. But if Cork do beat Clare, they are gone.
It's incredible, like with a game to go as well, to think that, the unstoppable Dublin of hurling, as they've been proclaimed recently, would be out with 70 minutes still to play in their season, that their last game for them becomes a dead rubber. Like, that's unthinkable. Like 12 months ago, if you said that, by the way, you've won the All-Ireland, well done, but next year you're going to be out with still 70 minutes to play. That would be, you would have got some odds on that, I'd say, for anyone to just give that to you. But unfortunately, unfortunately, maybe the wrong word. I've insulted Limerick enough over the last few weeks, so it's probably the wrong word to use. But it would be great for hurling if the other teams progressed and maybe they didn't. But it mightn't be good for the championship as a whole if they're gone, because I think it's still good to have them in it. But then maybe it's the chance for someone else now to step up to the plate, and maybe it just opens the thing up completely. And the next day we're talking about, 5 or 6 potential All-Ireland winners. How cracking would that be to have, as opposed to just saying, is anyone ever going to beat Limerick, ever going to stop this run? So, yeah, I'd love to see a Tip win. I know Shawnee or Seamus Flanagan's cousin will be texting me now after this, giving out that I maybe went for Limerick, but yeah, I think Limerick will just nick it. They've too much going on for them. John Kiley, I don't think is going to let this happen. I think he'd step down if it happened.
Jeez, it'd be an end of an era definitely for that. But I just can't see Limerick losing this game.
No,
I can't. Like Tipperary performed excellent. I don't think they've been excellent this season, but having said that, they're on 3 points. They're definitely going to get up to 5 because they're playing Waterford next week. No offense to any Waterford people watching, but I'm sure
every offense.
But I think they'd be probably agreeing on their team, and there'd be no more bowing with Davy Fitz anymore. And Tipperary should absolutely pulverise them next week. But I just think Limerick have enough to win this game. I really think Limerick have enough. But if you were to say Limerick would win and Clare would win, who I think we're both going with in this Munster round robin, it would mean Clare would be in the Munster final. I think they'd be on 6 points. Limerick would be on 4 points. Tip, let's just say, will be on 5 points, and then Cork will be on 3. So Cork have to beat Limerick next week at the Gaelic Ground. They've done it before in 2019, so. Even with those set of results that we predicted, it's still going to lead up to a mouth-watering game in the Gaelic Grounds next week.
Yeah, there's one outcome that negates next week essentially in some ways, but everything else leads to another cracking weekend. So probably as maybe I'm slightly more maybe neutral, that I probably should be hoping for that set of results to come true. That next week is the absolute belter again. And it's never going to let us down. Like, realistically, there is no such thing as a bad competitive Munster hurling game. Like, Waterford aside, like, they are dirt. Like, they are, I don't know what that lad is doing in there. Whatever mindfulness they're practicing in the background, they're bringing it out onto the pitch as well. So, it's set up for a great weekend, and fingers crossed, if things go well, it could be set up for us 2 great weekends in a row. And obviously then Westmeath are out next weekend as well. So, that'd be fantastic. But yeah, 2 great weekends of hurling potentially in the offing, which would be fantastic. I wouldn't go against the Cork victory either. As I said, a puck of a ball between the two of them, but puck of a ball could easily go either way. I'm going with Clare for now, but if Cork came out the right end of that score, it wouldn't it wouldn't shock me either. So, you still have plenty of hope.
Still have plenty of hope, all right, but we'll have to live in hope, definitely. But it's a situation, like, it's so frustrating because Cork, I think, have turned the corner this year. I think they've done brilliant this year. But it's just the nature of the championship they're in at the moment. Munster hurling, it's unforgiving. It's an incredible, relentless championship. And yeah, one team has to go out, and it's absolutely mad when you think about it. Like, one of them 4 teams, all Ireland contenders, will be out in the first round. It's incredible to think about that. But,
doesn't it make it amazing though? Like, imagine if we could say the same thing about the football. Like, how good would it be if we could say it's come down to the wire every week? Every week is like an All-Ireland final, whereas realistically, it's not. Like, most of the football probably won't even start, in inverted commas, this weekend. It'll be wait and see how your first game goes, and then you know what you have to do. So, whereas in Munster, minute 1 of game 1 is essentially the All-Ireland final thrown in, because if you lose, you're already up against it, and you're going to have to beat someone, a top club, a top county, to stay in it. Like, so, yeah, I'd love to transfer that somehow over to the football, but you're look, that's another day's debate.
Exactly. So, and before we get into the Leinster Championship, there's a comment coming in here. He'd love to see Sheedy as Waterford manager. I'm not sure would that ever happen.
No. I don't think Liam Sheedy will. I won't say step down to Waterford, but no, if that happened, that would be pretty. It'd be like seeing Pochettino going to Chelsea, like, in a few weeks' time. But I don't think Liam Sheedy will ever do that. I'd be stunned if he did.
You won't know. I'd say he won't, definitely. And we definitely move on to the Leinster hurling now, and we'll move on to the first game live on GA Go, Kilkenny against Dublin, Saturday evening at 6:00. Like, it's kind of a weird game, this. Like, Kilkenny are probably going to be in the Leinster final. A lot of people are agreeing that they'll be in the Leinster final against Galway, but Dublin won't be lying down either. They played a game Wexford where they actually shot off 28 shots, and Wexford had 48. And they still won the game somehow. So, like, they went out of Croke Park. They played well enough in fairness, and Wexford played a load of wides in that game. But despite Dublin beating Wexford last time out, you'd have to expect Kilkenny to romp home here.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the numbers. I knew Wexford hit a lot of wides. Jesus, 48. That's to not win the game with 48 attempts. That's ridiculous. But anyway, you'd have to fancy Kilkenny. Like, the only thing I think that Dublin just can't afford to do is just give away a freeze, because TJ Reid just has a field day. Like, it's become nearly TJ Reid versus whoever, because inevitably he gets at least 7 or 8 a game, and in some ways you can't give a free away anywhere, like, more than 80 yards out, like, from the goal, because he's going to knock it over. So you're essentially giving away free scores by doing that. But at the same time, because Kilkenny have relatively good running backs in most of the wing back positions as well. Like, Dublin are, I think hurling in some ways it's become quite easy to get frees nowadays. It's not like the olden days, obviously, where you could break hurls over lads' heads and get away with it, but it's nearly become very, very soft, and frees are given every few seconds nearly. So TJ Reid will probably, at the end of it all, will probably outscore the rest of all the Dublin forwards combined at the end of it all, and Dublin will do all right. Like, they're beyond the. I think Michael Donegal has them beyond the kind of the Antrim, Westmeath, Laois kind of teams that they were competing against. I think they're slowly, if there was such a thing as like slightly below the top teams, they're kind of in there. They just need more games against these teams and a better result here and there just to go with their favour. Wexford is obviously a good one. Need a couple more, and I think they will go back to being more competitive in games, but eventually they become a top tier side as well. I think it's just population wise, I think it just kind of really has to happen for them. So, and having Michael O'Neill in there is great. Kilkenny will still win up by 7, 8, maybe even double figures.
Could be all right, yeah. I'd have to fancy Kilkenny to win this game as well. Dublin, like, they most likely be in a Leinster final. That's if Wexford lose next weekend against Kilkenny, but that's at Wexford Park, so you never know in that sort of scenario. But we'll have to see over the next few weeks. And the next game here, Galway against Antrim. on a say 2 o'clock on Sunday, like you'd have to expect Galway to win the game. But Antrim had a good season so far. But at the same time, like if Antrim lose this and then lose Mullingar next week to Westmeath, that's suddenly relegation for them, despite having a decent enough season. So, like they still have to keep spirits up before next weekend.
Yeah, it's the one thing I suppose about the Leinster Championship that kind of they say it's great for us and Antrim and Laois, potentially to play these big games. The problem is that if you get relegated at the end of it, you've got to work your way back up, and in the time it's taking you to work back up against inverted commas lesser teams, the teams at the top have also pushed ahead by how many strides. So you're playing catch up to where teams used to be. And again, it goes back to the Italy and the Six Nations thing. How far ahead have those teams gone while you've been trying to catch up to where they were? And that doesn't help us at all, really, in the long run, because, we survived a relegation battle last year against Laois. Or, if it came down to it this year and we got relegated, got to work our way back up. And the time it takes to work back up, Galway, rattled 6-33 or whatever stupid score they got against us the last day. Like, they'll probably do the same to Antrim, realistically. And Antrim, on us, it's really a competition within a competition, which isn't exactly what you want either. So Galway will wipe Antrim, like, with a second string team, probably. I don't think all the big guns will really come out for that one. Like, Evan Nyland will probably score 15 frees and 10 points in the first half of play, and that'll be it. The game will be over at half time. They'll take him off, and that'll be it. Westmeath was done and dusted after about 10 minutes, so I can't see anything else except a very, very big Galway victory. So, yeah, one-sided affair, unfortunately, there.
Yeah, definitely so. And we'll move on to your own about in a sec. But this comment, yeah, we have to agree with him. You definitely dare, Evelyn. Like, yeah, it is football season, it is hurling season, and it is silage season more than anything as well. So, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. But we will move on to your own county last, but certainly not least. Going to Wexford, Chadwick's Wexford Park at 3 p.m. on Sunday. Westmeath drew against Wexford last year. Can they do the same this season?
In a word, no. Sadly, we have for some reason seen quite a decline. I don't know why in the hurling this year for the county. I'm actually just having a quick nosy at the team here just to see it, because it came out a few hours ago and I wasn't seeing it. It's the Westmeath are very good at doing these photos, as you might have seen on their team. So it looks fairly settled as it was the last day. There's a shot Birmingham. Tommy Doyle is in there, which is great. Robbie Greville is in there, which is great. Joey Boyle, Niall O'Brien, Owen McCabe. There's a mixture of youth and experience. But the fact Killian Doyle isn't there, by the looks of it, Davy Glennon is there. Killian Doyle, no. The fact that Killian Doyle isn't there probably puts us starting 7-8 points behind before the ball even throws in, and that's where we are realistically. As great as Kieran is, as great as Owen McCabe and Joey Boyle and the lads are, the fact that Killian was nominated for an All-Star tells you everything you need to know about how good he is on his day, and the fact he's not there, it's for us the equivalent of taking John Hesson out of the football team. You're taking away scores before the game has even started, and you're trying to make up those scores before you even start adding on to what you want to score. So, unfortunately, that to me is only going one way, and it's not Westmeath, I'm afraid. It's a pity because we were so good that day we got the draw here in town. It was so positive. It might as well have been, you might as well have just handed us to Liam McCarthy at the end of it, because it was just incredible for the 50 million to 1 outsiders to nick a draw against Wexford in that game. To now be potentially looking at just holding out to not lose by another high score again, which is a pity. But we have good youth coming through, to be fair, in a lot of the clubs. It's just, they're just a little bit too young at the moment to really get them in the senior team. So, future is bright, but it's not the immediate future. It's maybe a couple of years down the line. So Wexford by probably double digits at least, I would say. Game could be over at half time, unfortunately.
It definitely could, but yeah, you have to still give Westmeath a bit of hope, considering Wexford have been pretty poor in the last few weeks. But yeah, you'd have to expect Wexford to win the game. And yeah, this comment coming in, TJ will become a player above 600 points. I actually didn't know that this weekend, so there you go. You learn something new every day there. But before we we say our goodbyes in the podcast, anyway, just in regards to next week, Westmeath Antrim, are you confident that you could beat Antrim in essentially a relegation playoff now?
Yeah, I think that would be our standard at the moment. And again, I don't think that's going to be. I know we murdered them a few years back. I remember the Sky Sports front page of the Hurling had it at the time, that picture of Brendan Murphy here from out the road after Westmeath hammered Antrim. We've come back very much on par, whether it's us going backwards or them progressing. We're probably on par with them, realistically. And many might even argue that they're slightly more ahead of us, given they've performed pretty well the last couple of years, it has to be said. Like, they're not a pushover anymore, like they would have been historically. Antrim Hurling is very much on the up. Antrim Camogie is very much on the up as well. So it'll be a good shootout. I think we'd have enough to beat them. It wouldn't be by much. Again, it'll be a couple of points in the difference at the end of it all. So fingers crossed for that one.
Yeah, hopefully for our sake that Westmeath win that game. But on this podcast, we'll discuss it next week in detail. But it's brilliant to see a positive Westmeath person, considering the season that you've had so far. But we'll have to see over the next few weeks. And before we end the podcast, the Loaf of Bread podcast, where could we find you on social media? And I see you do a bit of commentary in recent weeks too. So fair play.
Yeah, I've been podcast kind of would start out as a hobby during lockdown. It's an unusual one to say a bus journey in the middle of Ukraine in 2019 started this podcast, but it did. That's a whole other story. But yeah, still on Instagram mostly, not massively big into TikTok at all. Been a primary school teacher, you spend most of your time putting out TikTok fires these days with older kids. So mostly Twitter and Instagram, doing the commentary for the LGFA, Leinster LGFA, and the ladies football as well. They've been phenomenal, so supportive, absolutely loving every minute of it. It's not something, again, that I ever wanted to do. Got a phone call one day and it's just gone from there. And I now have a weekly article in the Westmeath topic here as well, which is interesting as well to be doing something I love. I do love writing and I love history, I love research as well. So it's great. And the Jersey World Cup has just kicked off. On the Instagram stories the other day, about 650 jerseys in this one. So the last winners, Tailteann GA won the first one, JP Vancouver's Hurling won the last one. So there's huge rivalry. The last World Cup got over 120,000 votes. So we're hoping for big things in this one. We've already had a few casualties in the first round, disappointed losers, and some unexpected teams getting through. So be a bit of crack. But yeah, go on to the Loaf of Bread GA pod on Instagram and Loaf pod at Twitter, and you'll find me there generally. So
grand job. Yeah, it's a brilliant podcast, and Jason's a brilliant commentator, and hopefully he'll be the new Marty Morrissey in the next few years as well. So we'll have to see over the next few weeks or so. But thanks, Jason, for coming on to the podcast, and best of luck for Westmeath this weekend and Westmeath in general next week. They're playing Armagh next week, so bit of hope there.
Yeah, we'll maybe talk about that in more detail. We'll see. We'll see how things pan out, I suppose. I have to say as well, actually, big thanks to Casey Sports, because I didn't ask for any of this, but they approached me and asked could they design a podcast jersey, and now I have a podcast jersey, mug, bucket hat, and a hoodie, which I'm trying to get my hands on as well on Monday. So the stuff can be bought at Casey Sports. It's very weird saying it because I listen to the Two Johnnies all the time, and they are sponsored with Casey Sports, and now so am I apparently. So it's a bit bizarre, but yeah, stuff can be found on Casey Sports if anyone is interested in buying a few bits if you want. I don't get any money out of it. It's deadly to see people wearing the stuff around the place. So, but yeah, thanks so much for having me on again, Matt, and I'll hopefully chat to you again soon.